To our show, From Bustles to Boardrooms, Women's Progress in the Last 100 Years. As we celebrate the passage of the 19th Amendment, giving some, but not all, women the right to vote, we note again how women have advanced since 1920. We haven't done everything we wanted to do, but we've made some progress. This program, which I am lucky enough to moderate, and I'm Jan Sanders, by the way, retired head of the Pasadena Public Libraries. We've examined the centennial celebration through a discussion of the 2020 Rose Parade, the float that featured women who had driven the effort of suffrage. That was aired in January. We also marked the progress of women concerning their own health care and their own bodies, especially in the work of Planned Parenthood of Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley. That aired in February. And then COVID-19 hit and knocked everybody off the rails. But we're back now, and we're eager to restart the conversation. So tonight, we're beginning a 3-part series taking a look at women and the law. Our conversation now is with women attorneys, some from single women shops, some from government, some from women-owned firms. Then 2 weeks from now, we'll examine women in law enforcement with conversations featuring LA County Sheriff's Office and the Pasadena Police Department. Then late in the month, we'll conclude with comments from women judges, a highly timely and important conversation right now. And so we'll speak to women on the bench. I hope you'll make time for all 3 of these conversations, but for now, let's get to our guests. Tonight, we have Laura Farber from Hahn Hahn, Tara Newman, and Janet Braun. And I'm going to ask each of these ladies to give you just a brief comment about who they are and what they do. Laura, let's start with you.
Certainly. Thanks, Jan, and thanks for putting this together. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to these amazing panelists and getting a chance to chat with you and with them. My name is Laura Farber, as you mentioned, and I'm a partner with the law firm of Hahn Hahn LLC. And our firm was founded in 1899, so we've been around for a long time. We're hovering, I would say, at about 18 or 19 lawyers. We usually don't get bigger than that, but I'm very proud that we did something organically, and that is we have become a certified woman and minority-owned law firm. And I'm super proud of that and super proud to be working there. I work in the labor and employment area and also in an eclectic mix of civil litigation.
Thanks, Laura. Tara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gladly. It's great to be here. Thank you. My name is Tara Newman. I am a Deputy Attorney General with the California Department of Justice. I work in the Attorney General's office. Our current Attorney General is Javier Becerra. I am a civil litigator. I've been practicing law for 20 years, and currently at the AG's office, I'm in the Health, Education, and Welfare section, representing the interests of state agencies such as the Department of Public Health, the Department of Healthcare Services, the Department of Education, and about a dozen other agencies in those categories.
Thank you. Janet, bring us up to speed.
Thank you, Jan. I am currently the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for a specialty pharmaceutical company in Orange County called HBT Labs. I started and have practiced throughout my 30-year practice in the corporate and transactional area, starting at a big firm downtown Los Angeles and then moving in-house to a couple of companies, some of which moved outside of California. So but I've been at a foreign-owned oil services company and another biotech company before landing here at HBT Labs. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you all, ladies. This is going to be a lively and interesting conversation. We have such a nice array of representation from the various aspects of law and various positions within the field. So tell me a little bit. We're going to keep this just kind of free flowing. So whoever has a thought first, you jump in and start. But is it what you expected? Is it what you hoped for, being a woman attorney? Janet, you're smiling.
I'm happy to go. I mean, I'm happy to start with this. I don't think of myself as a woman attorney. I think of myself as an attorney who happens to be a woman.
Good girl. Good girl.
So that's number one. But, you know, I come from a family of mostly scientists. So I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. You know, came to the country. I'm an immigrant, proud immigrant with my parents at a very young age. And, you know, in my family, everybody was engineering or science or something of that nature, except for my grandfather. He was an attorney in Argentina, which was a very different experience than being an attorney here. There, they didn't have the tradition of orality. Their entire legal system is different. And I don't think it's as, how shall I say, as good. And I mean good in terms of some of the ethical, some of the rules, the approach, and, you know, a little bit of corruption, which I think is rampant in certain places. And so I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to do something that was different. I wanted to help solve problems, but I didn't realize this until my freshman year in college. I was on the debate team in high school, and I always loved to argue, but I was pretty good at science and math. So because my family was all science, I just kind of assumed that's what my direction would be. And so I started as a physics major. And then I quickly changed my major to political science with a business emphasis, and the rest kind of followed after that. And I went straight into law. I didn't take any time off between undergrad and law school, which I know a lot of students today are doing. But I pretty much knew that's what I wanted to do. And so being a woman in the law wasn't something I was conscious of, but I have become much more so just in terms of how the profession works and how much it's evolved from when I first joined the profession. So there's a lot there.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to go to Tara for just a minute, because you're in government, which seems to me would be a very fulfilling kind of practice to have. How much of your decisions and your path has been governed by a belief in the greater good, shall we say?
I think a significant amount. My father is a criminal attorney, and so I did not actually think I wanted to be an attorney based on what I knew of his work. And I started out after college as a third grade teacher, and I was able to learn more about, I guess, the bureaucracy of education, and I thought I would like to try to do some policy work in education, and that's what ended up leading me to go to law school. And I've always enjoyed writing, which is really a large part of my practice, which, you know, when I watched my father work, a lot of his practice was just oral advocacy. So that's what led me to law school. And then I started out working at a firm and finally found my way to government work, and actually working with the Department of Education, which was my goal 10 years prior. It just took me 10 years to get there. And I do feel very rewarded. I feel working as a public servant. I believe so much in the values of this country, and particularly the state of California. So being able to represent the people of the state of California is very fulfilling for me. And working in the area that I actually work in, which is education, health, and welfare, which are the services that honestly most Californians depend on so deeply, and they don't even, many people may not realize the amount of legislation and case law and other decisions that are affecting their day-to-day lives.
I think most of us are unaware of how universal the law is and how much of it governs our lives until something goes amok. And then it's a little too late to learn that lesson. So thank you for that. Janet, you wanna get in on this conversation?
Yeah, I would. I'll just kind of follow up a little bit on Laura's comments. So I was an engineering major undergraduate. And I came from sort of a family of scientists as well. I also had a father, like Tara, who was a lawyer. And he was an engineer turned patent lawyer, which a lot of people think of engineers going into patent law. I was sort of had several job offers and I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I went to law school thinking, well, that kind of sounds interesting. And my view is that, the law school is very foundational. And I think there is so much you can do with a law degree. And there's just, and even just the three of us, there's so many different ways you can go, but law school is very foundational. And I found, and someone once said, maybe it's too bad you never used your engineering degree. And I've said, well, no, I use my engineering degree every day, because the law, people think of it as writing and argumentative, but there's a lot of analytical skills that you really need. So it's been great. I am extremely happy with my career choice, and I was always a little bit more drawn into business, and I thought about going to business school versus law school, and I found a happy medium by going to law school but going into business. So there's so many options.
Yeah, good for you. I think we all have felt the passage of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and certainly she was a leader in many aspects of her career and opened some doors for a lot of people. None of us, I hope, none of us have had to suffer like she did. But were there points in your journey where you felt like you were really sort of struggling uphill and trying to capture some ground because of your gender? Who wants to address that?
Well, I'll take that one. I think for me, I will age myself here, but I started at a big firm in 1985. So in the mid 80s, where at that time, some of the private clubs still did not admit women in downtown Los Angeles. So but I've seen a big transformation throughout my career. I'd say one of the challenges for me, in at least in the private practice, was having children, and that sort of childcare, what to do with the demands of the practice and how to balance childcare duties and what you do as a parent with the demands of the job. So I'd say that one was tougher. I thought that I think by that time, firms, at least my experience was that they were trying to figure out a way to accommodate women particularly. I've seen a lot of progress. I'm not in the private practice area now, so Laura or maybe Tara can address that. But I think to me that was the toughest kind of challenge.
Right, and that is certainly not specific to the law, but any demanding high energy job, and certainly yours is one of those, probably has those same pratfalls along the way. What about Laura, you or Tara? Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. I can say that this will date me as well. I remember that when I was going to court for the first time, that I was told I had to wear a suit. I could not wear pants because women at that time couldn't go to court wearing pants. And I thought, my gosh, this is crazy. But that was in fact the case. And there would be judges that, would react. And I mean, you could be sent, out of the courtroom. And I also remember, and I heard, this is a story, it didn't happen to me personally, but one of my colleagues said that they had gone to the Court of Appeal to make an argument. And the judge at the time said, when the lawyer introduced themselves as Ms., with the last name. And the judge said, in my courtroom, you're either a Miss or a Mrs.
Oh my.
Oh my goodness. So, you know, these
That's
are just examples of some of the things. I
Right.
can also tell you, in being in a deposition and, you know, being asked by the deponent to go, you know, fill the meter or to get them coffee and things of that nature, going into a courtroom and being asked if you're the court reporter. I mean, you hear these stories, but they really did happen. And I've experienced them personally. And I think I'd like to say, I'd hope and think that things have progressed and are changing in that regard. But I can say that there's a lot of that went on, and it certainly shaped the way I looked at things and viewed things. And I certainly never wanted to be interfering with my clients' rights. I always wanted to do whatever I needed to do to be strong and represent my clients. I didn't want me to interfere with that, anything about me personally. So if I had concerns, I would have to deal with them in a different way.
And so some of your behaviors and some of your practices, as you were representing that client, your own self had to sort of be set aside so you were accepted by the court and that particular judge and all of that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. What about you, Tara?
Similar experiences. And I started practicing in 2000, and I was also told to always wear a skirt when I went to court. I was also told to wear pantyhose, which it was not what most people were wearing. And I thought it was odd that they were telling us what to wear to that degree when they weren't saying the same things to the male associates. I mean, they all wore suits, but they could choose, you know, what they were wearing. But they focused a lot on the female associates' appearance. And then also going to court and people asking, you know, if I was a court reporter, if I was the defendant, if I was a witness, anything but the lawyer, or when I am like, this is my card, I'm the attorney. Oh my gosh.
You're in charge? Oh no.
Like, well, I mean, this is not a confidence boosting moment when I'm getting ready to make my argument, when people are shocked that I've even shown up. And so there was just so many distinct memories of when I first started practicing 20 years ago, how rarely I saw a female judge when I went to court. And that has noticeably improved. It's still not at the levels that it should be, but just, you know, 85 to 90% of the time when I went to court, it was always a male judge. And so there was that element as well that I do feel is slowly starting to get better.
Well, let's hope so. I think we could say that about a number of professions as we go along. So it sounds like all of you, each of you, have had a wrinkle or two as you go along in terms of your own professional development and the development of your career. I think that's pretty typical. But talk to us a little bit about how we might overcome those kinds of things. Do you have experiences or words of advice to the ladies who are following you? And we want to talk a little bit too about whether or not you think women as a class have had an effect on the areas where you now find yourself working. Tara, let's start with you.
Well, I absolutely think that women have had an effect. I think that it makes such a difference in a working environment and then in a courtroom when there are women involved, when women are part of the decision, when women implement or use their own reasoning and unique skills to address topics that are raised in the law. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, especially in my work, the law is a guide for daily life, and women make up 50% of the people living daily life in this country. So it's imperative that they give their voice, use their perspective, their life skills, their reasoning when addressing the law. And I think that over time, that women have had a massive impact on the way that the law has been shaped and the way that cases are decided and the way that they're implemented and affecting our society. So, and then also I do believe there are some women who bring a different attitude when working as lawyers. There are some lawyers that are very aggressive and kind of macho, and There are some women who are like that too, but there's a lot of women that are more subtle or, reasonable in their approach to the law. And I think
a little more measured, at least, a little more measured.
Exactly. And I think that goes a long way in terms of, negotiations and resolving issues and getting people to see different perspectives by coming at it with a specific approach that women often bring.
I want the other ladies to weigh in on this too, but I was just thinking about, you do a lot with the Department of Education, and as we know, since March, the education system has just taken it on the chin. And we also have seen that mostly it's the women who stepped up and taken charge of things. So it'll be interesting to see how that field fares once the dust settles and we get back to normal, whatever that means and however that looks. So,
right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and then another one of my clients is actually the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, and there's a disproportionate number of women who are dealing with unemployment during this time, and I anticipate many more appeals of their benefits coming from women, and a lot of the reasons that could go with that are maybe specific to their gender, and I think it's important to have female analysis of some of those things because not everyone can recognize female-specific issues other than other women.
Yeah. Laura, you want to respond? You want to respond to this question as well?
Of course. I do think women have shaped the law and continue to shape the law, not just, the fact that we have more on the bench, obviously that has an influence because you not only have trial courts, but you have the courts of appeal where a lot of the decisions are written and we are, we use that as case precedent, especially in litigation, which I think is important. And we've developed concepts. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the whole reasonable woman
right.
standard and discrimination and the levels that have written. And I do a lot in the labor and employment space. So clearly those are areas that I think are important. What is a reasonable woman, person in that position as opposed to what a man might think? Those are actually standards that have developed in the course of the law that have changed because women have been involved in the law. And I think to Tara's point, I agree completely about the whole civility thing. I know that when I started practicing, I encountered a lot of what I call testosterone-driven lawyers. And I don't mean to sound so pejorative, but they felt that they needed to be not only aggressive, but rude and dominant in a way that wasn't helpful. It wasn't substantive. It was more the approach, the attitude, the mentality, and the way you're treating people, condescension and all of that. And I've seen it backfire time and time again. And, especially like when you're in trial, I've had, I don't know why, but the cases that I've tried, I've always had men all around me. And I'm like the only woman in the case, the only woman lawyer, maybe even the only client out of the clients, no women as well. But I had this one trial where I had 3 other lawyers in the case because there were multiple parties, and they just kept bickering with each other. And it was beautiful because I thought, okay, let them bicker. And hopefully the jury's going to look at me and say, she's the reasonable one. And we ended up prevailing, and it was beautiful. And so, but my view is, I think that it does come with how you treat people. And I've met women that are that way too. So it's not just necessarily a woman-man thing. But I do think that having the influence of women in the profession has brought a different approach. I think women tend to be more consensus builders. And I'm generalizing and stereotyping because not everybody's like that. But we tend to see things in a different way. I think we analyze things in a different way. There have been studies about the biology of our brains and how that all works.
Yes.
But I think that it's had an enormous impact and in a positive way. And, I think seeing women as lawyers, my own children, I think, see things differently because of what I've been able to do and how they've seen me in action. And so to your second question, which is the advice piece of this, I really believe that women need to go for whatever they choose. Whatever you want to do in life, don't let other people dictate or put limits around what you want to pursue. That's a woman's profession. That's a man's profession. Throw that out the door because that doesn't apply anymore. Or if it did at some point, and I think it did, I truly believe, and in this profession, I think that women are welcome. I think, yes, it depends on the work setting and the environment, But I don't think that you should let anyone else dictate those limits on you. You should pursue whatever you want to pursue, and don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of and can or can't do.
Well, that's a good train of thought. And young women have also said to me, and that includes my right to follow what is a traditionally female role. I can do that. We don't all have to stand up and sort of howl in the face of that. But I would think, Janet, that your situation would be incredibly male, being in a more commercial setting. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, so that is true.
You're really in an old boys club, are you not?
I'm a little bit. I'm a bit in an old boys club, but fortunately in the 21st century, which is probably a little kinder than the 20th century. I was going to say, Sandra Day O'Connor, I think the impact of women in the judiciary, Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman Supreme Court justice, was only appointed in 1981. And I think for myself and maybe Laura and Tara as well, like that was in my time as a young woman, but to some of the people who were, and I was in my early 20s, but for women who are in their early 20s now, it seems normal. So I think I see this kind of emergence of women in the profession, in the legal profession, as sort of an interesting continuum, because the young women lawyers now, like it's normal for them to see women Supreme Court justices and more women in the judiciary, and they aren't being told they have to wear, pantyhose and skirts in the courtroom. So I find it very interesting. But back to sort of the corporate world, when we were speaking earlier, one of the things I did note is early in my career, I felt that young male associates had the presumption that they were competent lawyers. So they were given the very interesting and meaty work, just out of the box, But when you were a woman, you kind of had to prove yourself, that you had to do a little bit of work. It took maybe 6 months to a year and there was kind of a hierarchy of preferred work. And so that was the case. In the corporate world, particularly in any kind of investment banking field, that has still been very, when I did securities work, and even now if we're dealing with bankers, it's very still male dominated. In this sort, you read about Silicon Valley and a lot of the startups, still very male dominated. Yes. And so I do find myself in very male dominated. We actually, at my company here, there's a lot of women, because I'm not only dealing with lawyers, I'm dealing with a lot of business people, both men and women. So, I think there are still some very male dominated aspects of the corporate world and kind of particularly in the C-suite. But it's a little different, because when you're an in-house lawyer, business person, you're also dealing with lots of other people who are non-lawyers. So, but I want to echo what Tara and Laura said. I do think women bring a unique, most of them, again, the stereotyping, but women have especially I think from my generation, we have a different experience. We have different life experiences than a lot of our male counterparts. And I think just those experiences help bring multi-factors into situations, particularly for me with negotiations. I always say I'm a deal doer, I'm not a deal killer. I don't kill deals, I get deals done. So even just sort of negotiating and being able to understand what the other party wants, what the other party needs to get any deal done or a case settled. And I think that's a skill set that a lot of women have, and men too, but I think that's pretty unique to women.
Have you found it productive, beneficial, easy to sort of make more alliances with other women as you move forward, or back to Laura's initial point, which was I'm not a woman who's an attorney, I'm an attorney who happens to be a woman, or have you looked at it in that way?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
But I think it is helpful to have women as mentors, for sure, especially when I began in my career, and now. But as time has gone on, it hasn't. As I've practiced longer, I don't think that my bonds are more particular with women or men attorneys. And I was going to add, like, in terms of what I have noticed, in terms of women wanting more for themselves and feeling entitled and empowered more so now probably than in the past when they were just beginning to get a foot into the legal profession. I think men have also, a lot of the subsequent generations of men just accept it, as opposed to some of the older ones who are like, what is she doing here? Now they're like, we're used to it. They're here. It's not, it is more just like, we're just lawyers. We're all lawyers here. And we do have different perspectives, but it's not, people are not as condescending as maybe they were 20, 30 years ago. And one anecdote that is kind of funny, I have 2 small boys, and when my son was 4, he asked me if only women were lawyers, because he only knew me and like some of my women friends who were lawyers. And he's like, can boys be lawyers? And I was like, yes, lots of them. But I think it's just
interesting juxtaposition there. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, interesting turn. I love it. Okay, thank you. Laura, you want to weigh in on this?
You know, in terms of alliances or relationships, I would say kind of what Tara's saying. I mean, I have some female lawyer friends and I have some male lawyer friends, and I have had a variety of mentors too. And I always tell people not to limit yourself with mentors either. You know, to me, I value the quality of the mentor more so than the gender or the ethnic or racial or religious or whatever background. It's more, is this a person that I think cares about me and is going to be able to give me some good advice, or to, you know, someone I can bounce ideas off of? And I have male mentors and I have female mentors. I have a variety of mentors from a variety of practice settings. I'm also really involved in the American Bar Association. So I've developed relationships there throughout the country. And I got to tell you that people practice law in different ways, and it's also geographically different, and the customs and traditions in different settings have an impact as well. You know, in some places in the country, there are way more men than there are women, just in terms of who's there. And so you know, if I'm working on a matter where I've got a lawyer from one of those jurisdictions in another state who's not used to having a lot of women involved, they might kind of react in a different way than somebody who's from maybe the greater LA area and is kind of used to seeing a whole bunch of, you know, women on the bench and women in corporate counsel, and women in government, women in solo or small firms or big firms. So I think it's just a function of your experience. And I think the longer we practice law, the more people that we, you know, build in and bring into our orbit. And so those alliances become so different and so interesting. And I value the diverse views. I actually want different views from mine. I crave hearing from people that look at the world differently from me, because I want to learn from them. And I hopefully want to influence them a little bit as well if I can. But I think that those alliances are informed by those experiences for me.
What is there about your current position, the place where you are in your career, that really brings you joy? You've all had to work really hard to get where you are, not just educationally, but experientially and through a lot of different avenues as you move along. So now you've made it, certainly. What is it about your current role, your position, the work that you do that brings you joy?
So
Laura, oh yeah, go ahead, please.
I'll jump in. You know, I love, after having practiced, I think early in my career, and then this is what I tell younger to people, is that you're more nervous, right? You're sort of nervous about, did I do this right? And I don't know the answer. And as you get more experience, you sort of, you know how to get the answer, or you've had a lot of experience, so you know a little bit, you know a lot more, and you're much just more confident. So I would actually, a piece of advice would be, just be more confident. And if you don't know, figure it out or go ask somebody. But in any event, the thing that brings me joy, I love the problem solving and the challenges and the variety of the problems that hit my desk. There's just so, my practice and sort of what I do is so diverse. I once said recently, I don't even know how to describe my job to anybody, but it's, from soup to nuts. I just do a lot of everything. And I love getting that variety of work, challenging problems, and seeing kind of the company really succeed in sort of an area that is really gratifying. So that's what I love.
A challenge and a joy, all at the same time.
A joy, yes.
Okay, Tara?
I would say my response is very similar. Like, I do enjoy that my job requires me to learn new things pretty much every week. It is challenging. You never know what you're going to come across. I mean, I have an established understanding of practicing law and the rules of civil procedure, but when you get a different set of facts and a different case and you get to delve into it, it is a very interesting and exciting challenge, and I appreciate that my job is not boring. And then, as I mentioned before, I do enjoy working where I work because of the public service aspect. There's so many interesting cases going on right now, and our office is leading the charge on a lot of them in terms of defending California's perspective on environmental issues, healthcare issues, and challenging some of the national things that are impacting the way that we live here. So I just feel very proud of the work that my office does, and what I really just enjoy is the challenge of every day.
Well, I'm sure it gives you a great sense of gratification to know that you are making a difference and very directly making a difference in people's lives. But you also have to feel like Sisyphus a lot of the time. You're really pushing that rock up the hill when it comes to what we're trying to do in California relative to the rest of the U.S., the rest of the world.
Yes, it is sometimes, but I just think so many times that has happened, and I do consider California to be a leader in a lot of progressive law, and so there may be defeats and there may be elements where no one understands it, and then 20 years later they're like, oh, we're going to do exactly what they suggested, because I think we're a more progressive environment than a lot of people. So I just think it's exciting, and I think the debate over all of the issues is very interesting. I mean, and it's just so cutting edge and constantly evolving day in and day out. So it's just an exciting place to work, and never a dull moment.
As a person who grew up and spent almost my entire adult life in the Midwest, I have to keep reminding my friends here in California that there is a big world out there. And the things that we take for granted here, and the not only behaviors, but the philosophies that we take for granted here are not necessarily universal once you cross the state border. So you have to kind of keep those things in mind. But good on you for trying to keep us as a leader and sort of set the pack. Laura, what do you have to add to this, please?
I'll tell you what brings me joy. A couple things. First is solving my clients' problems, and when they appreciate you and when they follow your advice, which doesn't always happen, but when they do, it's awesome. Especially when you can resolve matters for them and fix things for them and make it better for them. There's a true satisfaction when you can really help someone and do it in a way that you have integrity, you have great ethics, you have, you're doing it the right way, or what your moral compass tells you is the right way, and within the law. There's some pure satisfaction and joy that comes from that. But the other thing I want to focus on is my work environment allows me to be involved in my community. And as a lawyer in the community, it's important for me to represent my firm and represent myself in a way that instills that dignity in our profession, so that people in our community look at our profession and say, these lawyers are trustworthy, they care, they're involved, they're giving back, they want to make a difference. And I think that that's another thing that brings me great joy, because I've been lucky and fortunate enough to find a work environment. I started at a big firm. I worked there for a couple of years and realized in short order that I wasn't going to be able to do the things I wanted to do if I stayed at this place. So I had a mentor in the women lawyers that knew the hiring partner at my firm now at Hahn Hahn, and that's where I joined. But the philosophy has been that they encourage and expect the lawyers to be involved in the community. It's not just to do it on your own time. It's, we want this. And so because of that, I've been able to do a variety of things that have brought me a lot of joy, but also just the giving back. That's the joyful part. And to try to make our profession a better profession, try to help people beyond just my clients, whether it's, pro bono or whether it's developing policy for youth at risk or foster youth, which is something that I've been real involved with, or unaccompanied minors in the immigration proceedings, or whatever it happens to be that you get into, or domestic violence victims, where you can really roll up your sleeves and say, wow, this is really meaningful stuff, even though it might be pro bono, I might not be paid for it, but who cares? This is so joyful because you're making a difference and you're helping people. And I think that in and of itself is what has given me meaning in my practice, in terms of what I experience.
How much of that attitude is pervasive throughout the profession, and how much of that giving back, owning your community and working with your community is fostered by the fact that Hahn & Hahn is in fact a female-run organization?
Well, we've had this philosophy before we became a certified woman and minority-owned firm. So this philosophy has actually been there from the inception. So I'm very proud of that. It's not connected necessarily to the certification piece, but I do think that it's what you make of it. Put it that way. It's what you make of it, and it certainly has made an amazing difference. And for me personally, it's given me fulfillment. I don't want to work anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else because I have everything I need here. And that's another thing I want to share with the audience is don't settle. Don't work in a place where you can't be happy and you can't, fulfill your goals. Yes, sometimes you have to move around until you find a work environment that you enjoy, that makes you happy, that allows you to do the things that bring you fulfillment. And I think that is really the most important message, because so many of us, don't always do that, or we're nervous about it, or we're not sure. And then that's where the mentors come into play, because they can give you good advice about making moves or finding work environments that work for you. And I think that in and of itself makes an enormous difference.
I do think that it's difficult sometimes for us to move as readily as perhaps we should, given what you're saying and the areas of fulfillment. I had a mentor tell me once, hundreds of years ago, when I was starting out my career, that she had been in a bad marriage, and she had been in a bad job, and the bad job was 10 times worse. Well, that tells us something, doesn't it? In terms of the amount of time we spend in our jobs and lots of other things. But I take your point that your job has to be fulfilling and welcoming to you and develop you as we move along. But taking the other side of that coin now for just a minute, are there things about your work that keep you up at night? What do you wish you could do differently, better, more? I don't know. What keeps you up at night thinking about your career? I don't mean specific cases. We don't want to get into that, but in general, does anybody have a response to that?
I'll go first. What keeps me up at night is when I have, a dilemma, like an ethical or a moral dilemma, where I have a client that is not following my advice, or I have this horrible opposing counsel, which happens more than I'd like to admit, where I just can't connect in a way that I like to connect, to try and persuade or just to convince that, the approach is just not good. I mean, can you just stop the vitriol? Can you just, take it down 5 notches? Let's talk to each other with respect and with dignity. And, and sometimes it's like hitting your head against the wall. You're just going, gosh, how do I get through to either my difficult client? And we all have difficult clients. I think, at least I've had some.
We're all human beings, so you're going to run into a few.
That's right. And difficult opposing counsels. I mean, those to me have been my biggest issues, where, gosh, I just really want to find the high road, but sometimes you make it really tough, because that's the other thing. It's a double-edged sword, especially as a litigator. You want to be aggressive for your clients. And I say aggressive and, assertive, both. you can be aggressive without, someone calling you a negative thing or stereotyping you. But if they want to call you that, they're going to call you that. And you sort of have to develop that thick skin, because you have to be, and we are trained to be, vigorous advocates, zealous advocates for our clients. But we also want to treat people with respect and dignity. And I think what comes around goes around. And so that's something that you struggle with. And you want to make sure that you're not coming close to that fine line. You want to stay on what you perceive to be the good side of that line, while also advocating for your client, but then trying to make sure people are reasonable. And it's like you can't control it all.
A lot of balance. There's a lot of balance there to work with.
That's it.
There really is. Janet?
Yeah, I'd say that what keeps me up at night, I mean, every once in a while, you just sort of on a personal level, and then I'll sort of tell you on a more global standpoint. What keeps me up at night sometimes is there's like a problem, I can't quite figure it out. Like there's something got stuck. How can I get this person off a position, or how can I get creative about this agreement, or how can I get creative about this situation? And you really have to think about it. But I do think, people don't really think of lawyers as being creative, but you have to really be very creative sometimes and come up with some pretty unique and novel approaches to solve a problem. What I'd say that I think that just generally, lawyers don't always have the best reputation as a profession. And that I think is a shame, because the truth is when, and I say this even in a corporate environment, a lot of things I do aren't legal at all. They're just business things, but people come to the lawyers because they know the lawyers, oops, sorry. That's my green building and my light's going off if I haven't moved enough. But they come to the lawyers because they respect the lawyers and they want the lawyers to help them work through the problem. So somehow I think as a profession, we need to regain the public confidence. I think some of that is because of litigious, our current litigious nature as a society. So I think that's something for the profession to really think about.
Thank you. Tara?
What keeps me up at night? Sometimes.
Apart from your boys, we know that.
Yeah.
You have two little boys.
Getting me up early in the morning. Difficult opposing counsel is probably a big part of it. Never knowing if I'm going to wake up to an emergency motion, or just some people can be very unreasonable, and that's part of their strategy. And then also just worrying about decisions that I'm making, fleshing out my arguments. I mean, sometimes I will just continue to not be able to turn it off when I'm working on something really important, and you do get so invested and really wanting to do the best for your client that sometimes you just worry, like, I hope that this is going to get it done. I hope that I'm not missing something. I'm just, and you just can't sleep because you keep wondering and second guessing and trying to perfect your argument all night long.
I'm sure that's true. If there were two things that you could offer your younger self as you were coming into the profession, what would those be?
I would say definitely more confidence. When I started at a firm, and there was a lot of people who would say inappropriate things and jokes about, filling quotas, that women are here to fill quotas, minorities are here to fill quotas. And knowing how capable I was, I knew that wasn't correct, but then it just lingered in the back of my mind. Like everyone here thinks I'm just here to fill a quota. No one gets how smart I really am. So I felt not doubting myself in a bit, like listening to and worrying about how people were perceiving me, where I should have just kept going and not let that stress me out. I mean, I did keep going, obviously, but letting it really kind of affect my self-esteem is something I would tell my younger self. Don't even sweat that at all, because
So know that you can do it, and then just get out and do it. Right. Anything else?
So I would echo Tara's comments. I think that I would wish I had been more confident. I mean, I was confident, but I just needed to kind of embrace that confidence and just sort of go forward and get things done. And also, along with that, is ask for the work that I wanted to do as opposed to taking the work that was given to me. So really kind of going out there and saying, you know, I'd really like to do this, or can I get on that deal, or can I get on that transaction because I'd really like to do it. Here's where I think I bring these skills. And I think that's generally another stereotype, but women tend to hold back as opposed to move forward and really be a little bit more assertive. And I think women tend to doubt themselves. And so I would say, do not doubt yourself. You can do it. And just go for it.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yes.
Always
That's
easier said than done.
No philosophy of leaning
question.
in, you know, and we lean in.
It's interesting as you proceed in your career and you see some of these more confident, often, you know, men, then you see what they're doing in their product and you're like, what in the world? Why does he think he's so great? This is not great. And so you realize like a lot of it is really in your mind, like you psych yourself up and go, because you're really capable of much more than you give yourself credit for.
Yes.
I would say get over the imposter syndrome, because I know I have that where I look around like, am I supposed to be here? Is this really me? I mean, you know, there have been so many occasions where I didn't feel like I belonged there. Like I wasn't capable yet, or I hadn't proven myself enough, or whatever it was. I had to get over that. And I think there are still times where that comes up. And a lot of us have that, and we need to just get over that. Number one. The other thing I've learned is when I feel slighted, and I've been slighted, I mean, we've all been slighted, especially in a meeting where you come up with an idea and no one says anything. And then 2 seconds later, the guy says it and all of a sudden it's brilliant. You know, I've started to fix that by saying, thank you for acknowledging my idea. You know, saying it point blank, just putting it right there, out there, being direct and not being afraid to speak when you feel you need to speak to fix something or to make it right. You know, just go with it. And now, you know, use your best judgment, but there were times where I would just sit there on my hands and then stew, and then it would eat me up and I would just get so upset. And now I just say, you know what? I'm not going to let that bother me. I'm just going to fix it right here and right now. And I think that, you know, I wish I had done that much more frequently when I was younger. I think now I don't even think twice about it. I just do it.
Well, and I think you've come up with some very thoughtful ways of saying that. You know, it's not a confrontational kind of thing. It's just, you know, you open with, well, thank you for helping me get my idea out, which, by the way, was a lot better than any other idea at this table. But anyway.
And just following up on that, you know, and there's been a lot of studies done on sort of women in meetings particularly. And I know that I try very hard when I feel like the conversation, there's women in the meeting and there's a lot of men in the meeting, I try to acknowledge women's comments and try to, you know, make sure that the conversation is balanced. And, you know, Laura, what do you think about that? Or Tara, what a great point. And I do think as a sort of more senior woman, that is one of the things that I really consciously try to do and to sort of help just kind of validate the younger women in the room.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. You know, how do we mentor the next ones coming along? What do we say to those coming up that will not just what you wish you had known, but how do we encourage them? And certainly playing to those individuals in any sort of group setting that you can would be a part of that. Are there other methods that help bring some of those younger ones along? Anybody have a thought on that?
Well, I would also say, you know, I think including women in, you know, you're negotiating something or you're going to a meeting, bringing the women, other younger women or less experienced women with you and kind of trying to just help mentor them. I think, and again, and you know, and it's not just women, it's men too, because actually younger men need to understand that women can be their bosses, that, you know, so it kind of goes both ways. So I think, you know, just mentoring and kind of including women and helping them and just being very honest about kind of your own experience and what was difficult and helping when you can.
I also think we have an obligation to bring other people forward. I mean, I don't think I had too many people that, you know, really strongly advocated for me, other than this one woman that I remember that helped me get the job I have now. But I feel an obligation to do more of that because I didn't have as much of that. I think it's just the time of when I was coming into the profession and my circumstances. And I just feel an obligation to do more of that and to bring other people and bring them in as Janet has mentioned, but also give them opportunities and boost them and introduce them to, you know, ways to develop business, for example, which is not an easy thing to do. And people don't teach that. It's not like there's technical skills somewhat, but, you know, it's how do you get people in front of clients and potential clients, and how do you boost them and give them the opportunities? And that is part of that, is being conscious of it and then making the affirmative steps.
Do you find that's also true with, you mentioned working with diverse groups, not just women and men, but other diversities as you move forward? Would you offer them the same kind of advice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's crucial. I want this profession to look like the public. I want people to look at the bench and to feel that they can access our court system because it reflects our beautiful diversity. And I think the only way we're going to do that is by empowering and bringing other people and giving them those opportunities. And I think we're obligated to do that. And I think shame on us if we don't, and we should. And I feel specifically important, you know, my Latinx community, I need to boost them, but I also need to boost my African-American sisters and brothers and Asian American, Native American, and everybody. I mean, let's just bring them all in here because, you know, they need to be front and center and have those opportunities. If not, you know, we're not reflecting what our society looks like, and we're not going to continue to be able to support the rule of law in the way that we should.
Absolutely. Any thought from you, Tara, on that?
Oh, I just 100% agree. I think definitely recruiting and reaching out to women, people of color, some of the more underrepresented groups, and really giving an honest perspective of what I've gone through. Discussions such as this are perfect for younger women to see, just so they can be encouraged and go forward and understand, you know, what's gone on in the past and what they may expect, and really encourage them to feel confident in themselves.
Thank you. What about you, Janet?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things. And I think, yeah, just giving more opportunities to people who might not otherwise have them or be shut out, women, people of color. You know, I think we do need to have the legal profession look like, you know, the United States of America in its beautiful diversity.
Thank you. I think what each of you has said echoes the idea that as women, we are not single-faceted beings. We have a lot of things that we're interested in, a lot of things we're really, really good at. And so this idea that 100 years ago, we finally got the vote, or many of us got the vote, and now we're seeing some progress moving forward in a lot of different areas. Certainly, as we said earlier, we haven't achieved everything we want to achieve, but we've certainly made some inroads. I hope that you'll join us in a couple of weeks when we take a look at women in law enforcement. And we'll talk again to the LA County Sheriff's Office representatives, and also a couple of representatives from the Pasadena Police Department. We all know that these are not easy times in which to be a law enforcement officer. And so we'll get some interesting perspective from women in those particular fields. So thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for letting us share our thoughts with you on From Bustles to Boardroom, Women's Progress in the Last 100 Years. Thank you, and enjoy your day.